So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another week of the Global Cafe. My name is Kara Cruz, and I'm very excited to be introducing you today to Dr. Aaron Guest on the topic of age-friendly universities. So Dr. Guest is a socio-environmental gerontologist and assistant professor of aging in the Center of Innovation in Health and Resilient Aging at the Edson College of Nursing and Health Innovation at Arizona State University. He is an interdisciplinary trained socio-environmental gerontologist and interested in the predominant social and environmental domains an individual exists in and how this knowledge can lead to new understandings of health. His work pulls from a diverse, theoretically rich background, including training in public health with an emphasis on health promotion, social work, with a focus on macro level policy and community change, health communication, dissemination and implementation science, social work, network analysis, sociology, and geospatial approaches to understanding health. So through this work, he seeks to develop novel, tailored health interventions that can be utilized to increase the diffusion and translation of health interventions, and thus increase access and utilization of critical health programs and services for older adults and their families. In short, he aims to create the optimal person environment fit for the most advantageous health benefits for individuals as they age. The scope of his research can be grouped into two overarching themes: interventions for decreasing health inequities and improving health equity in aging in the social and built environments. The thematic connection between these domains is a commitment to and an interest in the social and built environments in which individuals age and the development of understandings of the ideal and environmental fit from this knowledge. In addition to all of these roles, he serves as the chair of the Age-Friendly University Global Network Secretariat based out of Arizona State University. So thank you and welcome, Dr. Guest.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
So as we can see from your bio, you have an extensive academic history specializing in aging. How was it that you became interested in aging and the influence of social and built environments on experiences of aging?
Yeah, so I really became interested in aging. I was one of those people that didn't really have any plans to go into gerontology or work with older adults or any of that throughout my early career. But really what happened was during my master's program, I thought I was going to go into work in sexual health and well-being. And I really had some great opportunities through graduate assistantships and trainings to kind of work in some what at the time was the oldest public housing complex in the on the East Coast, as well as in a rural community at a farmer's market on two research projects. And I really became interested in the fact that in both of these communities, older adults were by far the largest percentage of the population, yet all the programs, all the activities, all the things that we were kind of planning and doing actually weren't engaging them at all. It wasn't targeting them at all. And so I started focusing on that a bit, and that led to some additional opportunities that really kind of put me on this path. And then when I was planning to think about what I wanted to do, postgraduate school, I was like, oh, there's these trainings and opportunities in gerontology I should look into. And so that really kind of what set me on the path was just, kind of noticing that we weren't, even though we were doing all these programs and activities and research projects to engage these two communities, we were kind of missing out on this really large section of the population. Like, why was that?
Yeah, it is really interesting, and I think a gap that many of us see in so many different sectors, which makes it an exciting field to be part of. So in addition to your roles as gerontologist and an assistant professor, you're also the chair of the Age-Friendly University Global Network Secretariat. So could you tell us a little bit more about the global network and then the principles that guide it?
Yeah, so the Age-Friendly University Global Network was established in 2012 by Dublin City University in Ireland. And really what it was developed out of is really some international convenings and conversations around the specific role that universities could have in assisting older individuals, but also being part of the broader age community, recognizing that the demographic transitions that we're seeing globally that are occurring, it really kind of built out, at its heart, it was developed in some ways in response to the World Health Organization's age-friendly cities and communities. As a lot of the work that was being done, universities were being engaged, but then after kind of the process of undergoing becoming an age-friendly community, universities were kind of not as engaged anymore. Essentially, that they would come in, do some of the assessments, do some of the conversations, and then kind of leave. And so it became a question of like, what is the unique contributions that universities can make to the age ecosystem, but also how can universities best serve older adults as we think about these broad demographic and economic shifts that are occurring globally? Through that and international convenings, the 10 principles of an age-friendly university were established. And these 10 principles really kind of build off the work of the age-friendly cities and communities movement. And they focus on recommendations essentially for universities and institutions of higher education to take in order to engage the older members of our society, but also to develop intergenerational communications. And the 10 principles focus on ensuring that older adults are part of the core activities of the university, ensuring that we're able to have training and programs that not only address second careers, but also the range of educational needs, recognizing that universities are really well suited to provide lifelong education, that the fact that we need intergenerational connections to facilitate not only expertise in aging, but really to further advance all fields. At the time they were developed, we had a very large focus on online educational opportunities. And one of the things that I think is increasingly changing and we're having conversations about is like, what does that look like moving forward? Also focusing on aspects around that the research programs of universities not only are informed by the needs of aging society, but that we also have that bidirectional conversation that we can develop programs that support health and wellness, cultural activities, that we're engaging with the university's own retired community of faculty, staff, and students. And then that we're having ongoing dialogue like we're doing today on the needs of the interest of the age of our aging population, both specifically to the institution, but also more broadly. And it really focuses on how institutions, the principles, how institutions can really be engaged now in their local communities and beyond. One of the things that I think we're increasingly looking at too is the fact that how do we ensure that we're able to meet the needs of future aging individuals as well, and that universities are increasingly able to respond to the needs of students throughout their careers and learners. It was developed based on those principles, and early on, University of Strathclyde and the Arizona State University joined the network. As it grew, the idea was never really to develop it into a network. In fact, it was really the 10 principles that were kind of established and shared. And then what happened is as it kind of naturally grew, more and more universities became interested to the point that, we have over 110 universities after 10 years who are a member now. One of the things that I think stands out is we've never done an active campaign. We've never done a recruitment drive. It's really been by word of mouth that people have joined the network and have started to build these really strong communities. In 2023, the Global Secretariat moved to Arizona State, and we were able to establish kind of a new model of governance, one that kind of makes it more of, I think, a broader network where we're able to engage with one another through the establishment of things such as working groups, of sharing resources, and these things were kind of happening informally, but now we're able to give it much more formal structure.
Thank you for that. And just so
Yeah.
interesting to know just how organic the creation of the network was and navigating kind of taking advantage of those informal connections and just making it a little bit more formal and accessible for those who might not be part
Mm.
of the network yet as well. So could you share a little bit about how education and the university space more specifically interact with other elements or spaces within the age-friendly ecosystem? I really liked how you kind of spoke about this idea of universities having the potential to be embedded within their communities. And yeah, I would just love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think universities are well suited to kind of, in some ways, serve as a convener, and if not a convener, then a central hub of the age-friendly ecosystem. And we kind of see that throughout our range of members. That, when we look at things like age-friendly cities and communities, as I shared, a lot of times universities are assisting in those activities through conducting the surveys, the assessments, and kind of the data collection strategies that inform some of those applications that go in. We also are training the next generation of public health and healthcare systems professionals, and so we're able to kind of introduce the concepts of age-friendly healthcare, age-friendly public health much earlier on. In addition, a lot of our members are actually both age-friendly university. Well, I say a lot. We actually have one right now that is age-friendly university and an age-friendly healthcare system. Increasingly, the number of our universities who also operate academic medical institutions are joining both as age-friendly healthcare systems and age-friendly universities, and we're able to really build those connections there as we look at things such as age-friendly public health. We're also able to build increasing connections across those networks through our local public health schools. The group in there's a group out of the United States in Pennsylvania who is engaging, really looking at what age-friendly nursing homes look like. In Ireland, where it was established, it was really focused on ensuring that we're able to build connections between our communities. And one of the exciting things we're working on right now in South America, in Central America, hopefully along with through conversations we've had with PAHO, is identifying how universities can contribute really to the development of age-friendly communities as serving as either the central hub that helps communities start along that process, or as serving as a resource for universities, cities and communities as they undergo the age-friendly cities and communities process. And of course, I think universities are having ongoing conversations with employers and those in the field who are providing and hiring for caring and services for older individuals. And so I think we have a lot more of a role that we can play than people consider, especially when you start looking at the breadth of what universities do, not only providing education, but also conducting resource search and providing community activities around the culture and arts. In addition, universities have very large, both internal to themselves, aging and older adult populations, including retired faculty, but also alums who can be engaged. And I think having the conversations is really one of the strengths of the network, that it's kind of encouraged a lot of institutions to consider, like, universities are much more than things than just 18 to 21. There's a lot of ways that universities can be engaged with throughout the life course, which is really part of our focus, but particularly in older age.
Thank you for that. So the IFA, for those attendees who may not be aware, we, with the WHO, co-run the Age-Friendly Environments ECHO program. And within that program, we really do recommend that cities and communities make these partnerships with universities, because they are just such a source of strength for making sure that your initiatives are informed by older persons. You're actually recognizing the needs within your community. So it's really nice to hear the flip side of the university experience as well. So for my next question, sometimes when we think of an initiative designed to promote the inclusion of a population based on certain characteristics or identities, we adopt a bit of a kind of charity model lens, where we think about all the benefits that are being created for this population, but it doesn't really give us the whole picture of what's going on. Could you share with us an example of how members of the university community can benefit from when universities commit to being age friendly?
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the major things that we think about is like how are the universities benefiting, and how are we having this really bi-directional exchange of information and resources and information. I think one of the things that we've really kind of, I think of our colleagues in Brazil, the Pontifical Catholic University of Campinas. One of the things that they've really been able to do is identify ways to, by talking to their community, identify new degree programs that they need to develop based on what they're hearing. Others have, developed really community advisory boards that help inform the offerings of programs, the availability of, cultural events, have informed the things such, conversations around like, oh, I'd love to walk on your campus, because many of our many campuses are central to downtown areas and environments. And so I love to walk on your campus, but there's not really enough benches, or there's not enough places for water. And those kind of conversations where we're able to build, more collaborative and more collusive, more kind of comprehensive environments. I know the Queensland University, I believe, has done some of that work, really focused on, we want to make our university, our institution, more accessible to the broader community. And how do we do that? Other institutions have really informed the work by having conversations around the fact that, how can we be better neighbors? How can we be better global citizens for our aging community? University of Strathclyde, for example, they're one of the co-leads and partners, but they've really focused on the fact that what are the interests of the individuals that we're working with, and how can we kind of expand on that to provide not only opportunities internally for us, but how can we grow and learn and kind of promote that. So they've done some exciting things around genealogy. They didn't have too much focused on genealogy, but they've heard that that was something people were interested in, and they were able to build up their own um, infrastructure around there. For us here at, Arizona State University, I think one of the really strong benefits that we've had from the process has just been hearing more about the actual interest of the population that we think, we're serving, where in reality, they're really giving us a lot of important and critical feedback on the research that we're conducting, the offerings that we have, and how we can think about, preparing the future workforce. The other thing I think that we've really learned from them, as well as our students, is the importance of ongoing collaboration. We talk a lot about like, oh, we should have mentorship programs and we should do this, but I think actually hearing that people want to do that, and if you're going to do it, here's how we want the mentorship program structured. And it's just, throughout the 110 or so universities and members, I think people have done such exciting projects that kind of get in this, and have really heard back from their communities that we thought we were working with, that we thought we were serving, about how we can make ourselves more accessible, but also how we can really improve our processes based on what we're hearing from the outside.
That's great to hear that it's such a reiterative process as well. And it actually kind of opens up space. We have a question in the chat from Shmuel, who is a regular contributor to the IFA.
Mhm.
And he's asking, how can students support becoming universities to become age-friendly environments?
Yeah, so I think students are a really strong advocate in the process. When becoming an age-friendly university, is we really think about it as kind of a three-step process, in the sense that it really focuses on developing an age-friendly university working group and identifying your age-friendly university champion. And through this working group, kind of doing an inventory of what's going on your campus. Not necessarily to say that, we expect there are things going on the campus, but we're often hopeful. One of the things we increasingly find in aging services, that I think is true for all of our aging services and aging education and gerontology, is that there's so much going on in the field of, for older adults, for lifelong learning at institutes of higher education, but we often don't know what other people are doing. I use my own example to kind of pick on us a bit. I am in a Center for Innovation, Healthy, and Resilient Aging, and we do research, but the lifelong learning is actually handled by another division. And we have the Masters of Science in Aging, but the undergraduate's aging is in a completely different college. And then, oh, by the way, there's an entire university-based retirement center that we're using and we operate, that is on a completely different college. And so often universities have a lot going on, but they're not necessarily the cohesive activities we would like to think, as particularly as people looking, outside in at the universities, who think that everyone talks to one another. We really don't. And that's a broader challenge. But I think where we kind of help and where we want to step in is like to have those conversations going. And through that process, we hope that institutions will be able to identify and align their activities with our principles, or at least to say, like, this is where we're going. One of the important things is to, become a member doesn't necessarily require active activities as much as it does a promise of wanting to engage in age-friendly activities. Students in that role, I think, are critical, and that some of our institutional partners have actually gone through the student government to have to kind of put pressure on the institution to join. Others have, engaged students in the planning and kind of development of their age-friendly university application and the activities that they want to develop. Still others have developed really exciting activities around intergenerational communication and engaging students. And like, what do you want out of these experiences that we're developing? Or what would be your ideal experience as we think about engaging our alums, about engaging our broader community? And even kind of doing processes where it's like, all right, what biases does our student population have? Not that necessarily biases exist, but I would argue that in most cases that they do. But what's unique to our situation, and how can we really do something that's more targeted to our unique institution and our unique community?
Thank you. And yeah, I think it's so important to recognize the situation that you're in and make sure that your responses are catered to that. So, building off this question about students, as a professor, what have your experiences been with students as they first become introduced to the concept of age friendly or to the field of gerontology? So, for example, reflecting on my own experience,
Yeah.
I come from an academic background in disability studies and political science. So, I was aware of many of the ways in which policies, either intentionally or inadvertently, contribute to the marginalization of certain populations, in my case, people with disabilities. But it wasn't until I had the privilege of working with the International Federation on Aging that the full extent of the challenges that come with having a global aging population, which is an enormous achievement, really came to light for me. So, how do you navigate your students through these realizations, and what excites them about being part of this field?
Yeah, I think that really points that kind of goes back to a lot of the thinking that I've been doing lately about, how are students getting interested in this, and how do we engage more students? I think what we know broadly in, higher education is that students don't necessarily consider a career in aging when they come into education. How many of us thought that, oh, I want to be a gerontologist when I grow up when we were in high school? And there's a lot of one of the things that excites me is increasingly the work we're doing to get into high schools to provide additional training and introduction. And we see that playing out in the United States. If we just look at the massive gaps we have in meeting the needs of an aging workforce, including the development of gerontologists and geriatricians. And so one of the things I think that we are trying to do is trying to expose individuals to aging as a field, gerontology as a field, and older adults. And doing so requires that we have opportunities that they can engage in. I think what I increasingly see is once students are exposed to it, or once they're kind of, made to think about that, a lot of doors open, and they think about their careers in different ways. In a previous life, I taught at an institution that had an aging course, an intro to aging, essentially required for about 5 or 6 majors, and was also a general ed class. And one of the main things that people after that class would come up and say, like, oh, I had never considered how we might engage older adults in accounting, or dance, or even English. Like, I really kind of want to go in this direction. And a lot of students, after being exposed, do kind of have this broader interest. I work with undergraduates kind of one-on-one through a honors process, and one of the things that always stands out to me is kind of when they come to me, they're interested in my training in public health, but then oftentimes their final product ends up being something around aging. Because I had a real estate student who was like, oh my goodness, I had never considered the fact that, like, all these homes are going to be like, people are going to need new care, they might want to move, like, and these homes that we have for this generation aren't what this generation wants. And so I think that's one of the things that really excites me. But it's figuring out how we can have that initial exposure. And one of the things I think age-friendly universities do is they do kind of promote aging more broadly, and they kind of hopefully will lead to the development of more opportunities for students to be exposed to older adults. One of the ways that we know that ageism is primarily able to be addressed is through exposure and kind of introduction to older adult individuals. And so by being able to put those more front and center, and by being able to kind of put university resources and kind of a university commitment to allowing those opportunities, I think is one of the things that really excites me about the network, and that we hear from network members, particularly in environments where there may be only one or two people focusing on aging efforts, that once they're able to kind of have that conversation in a more broad way, you start hearing not only from partners in the university, but also community partners who are interested in providing more opportunities for student and older adult interactions. I know intergenerational learning has been something that has become really clear as an interest, and we've actually are establishing a topical interest group that will kind of be focusing on that moving forward, identifying best practices that we can share with our partners both in the network and beyond. One of the things that increasingly is happening is our network members are sharing resources around things like what is the best practice for retired faculty and email access? What are the best ways to introduce students to aging? What are the assignments that people like to do that kind of introduce students to aging? But also, how do we do things like, if we're in these fragmented systems, how do we have conversations among ourselves, so it looks like that to the broader community we know what we're doing, but also with the broader community in providing these new opportunities for individuals as they age.
Thank you. And I think that speaks really nicely to a comment in the chat from Brendan Sherlock about how it pays to talk and being open and transparent and just creating that
Yeah.
opportunity for collaboration. So I see Dr. Tiago Herrick de Sa has his hand raised. Tiago, would you like to unmute?
Yes, and many thanks, Kira, Aaron, colleagues. It's a fascinating opportunity, and for me, it's also excellent to see this renewed effort towards mobilizing, energizing universities to work to become more age-friendly and to create these age-friendly societies. So huge thanks for the opportunities. For those who don't know me, I am the responsible officer at WHO for age-friendly environments at HQ, which includes the coordination of the global network for age-friendly cities and communities. But I'm also a trained researcher, so I'm happy twice with with this conversation. And many thanks, Aaron, for all the points you mentioned, the principles. I think it's again excellent to see the energy around this, because universities are really behind the success of this story. As the WHO developed the framework in close collaboration with other people and universities, and universities were since behind this story with all the different angles that Aaron has already mentioned. I would just like to highlight two additional ones that either it escaped me or Aaron didn't mention. One is, of course, the role of universities as employers. So how they can themselves become more age-friendly when it comes to their own employees. And of course, the fact that universities have not only partnered with many age-friendly programs, oftentimes, and even to these days, still the case, many universities lead age-friendly programs on behalf of their cities or their communities or their countries even. And several national programs actually, they were born within universities in research projects and programs within universities. So just to flag these additional two very important roles of universities in this agenda. One thing that I would like to highlight as well is that universities are at the forefront of the thinking of the society to be. We are facing a very rapid demographic change, which is fascinating. It's a beautiful story of success for humankind, but that also impels us to think and rethink how we organize ourselves. And I think that there's a very important role of universities in supporting that thinking, how to create public health systems for this new society, public transport systems, educational systems, and so on and so forth. And then Just one additional aspect, Aaron has already mentioned this. Now we need to train the people that will build our roads, design our buses, now create houses, architects, planners. So mainstreaming age-friendly across the curricula of universities and creating new undergrad programs where they don't exist is also fundamental. But one thing that I wanted to highlight, Aaron, and I would really like your support in this, and of course all the universities from around the world, and I'll be more than happy to collaborate with you on that, is to try and have a better systematic assessment and understanding of what you've already mentioned. Like, what has been the contribution of universities across the world? How many of them already have some of these topics mainstreamed? How many of them have like an internal process for these different initiatives to talk to one another? So if we could try and get a better picture and in a more systematized way that only researchers can do, I think we would also be in a much better position to understand where the gaps are and what is that universities and age-friendly programs need to do more to advance on this together. That's me. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much,
No,
Tiago.
thank
And yeah, I'll leave it to you, Dr. Guest, to respond.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for bringing all that up because yes, copy paste, I completely agree. I think one, to your first comment on employment is really kind of fascinating because actually one of the we're actually getting ready to launch a lot of working groups because our members have kind of now that we've kind of coordinated and increased our conversation, so ASU took over in August of 2023, so we're very new. We're still very new to kind of changing I think the network from being more of a passive network to more of an active network. But one of the things that actually is happening is next month, an employment group will be launching, focused on that exact question about how do we engage our own university employees? Like what are the best hiring practices? What's the best opportunities for engaging and increasing, not only the employment of individuals, but how do we think about the services that they need, the programs that they need? What do phased retirements look like broadly? And so that's really, they're focusing on really age inclusion across the employment lifespan. And so I'm really excited to see the work that that group does. And of course, we do this work with the aim of sharing it on the network members. Yes, I think the two, our partners, I think of our partners in Brazil, Ireland, and Canada that lead a lot of the exciting efforts and national efforts. And one of the things we're increasingly doing is trying to partner with more Asian, South American, and African institutions to introduce these concepts. One of the, like, as I've said, we kind of are focusing much more now on active recruitment to really instill these principles. And so one of the things that we are now moving forward with is development of our resources in additional languages. Which reminds me too, one of the other very fascinating things about taking this over is actually more universities have our principles and engage in our principles on the website, but actually aren't members of the network. And so figuring out how we can identify all institutions that are engaging in age-friendly practices is something very high on our list. And the last thing I'll say, because I could go on about some of this is, yeah, actually in the United States, one of the things we're doing, and I see some of the people I think here, is that later on this spring we will actually be having a convening of the different age-friendly ecosystems, thanks to the John Hartford Foundation, who is on the call, where we're actually going to be looking at that and identifying how we can increase our collaboration and what's the missing data. One of the things we've done, along with the lead of age-friendly communities and cities in North America, AARP, is we've actually both now included on our applications a place for individuals to indicate whether or not they're part of age-friendly cities or communities, our age-friendly public health, our age-friendly workplace, with the idea of that, and along with some of the work that others are doing to build these kind of national databases of where people are at and what they're doing, and then to connect people. As I said, we had a wonderful call with colleagues who were like, to your point, that basically universities are leading a lot of these initiatives, but then we lose them. And so how do we keep them engaged, and what are the ways that we can do it? And one of the ways I think is by having them really think about the principles and coordinating their efforts. So yeah, yes to all that. It would be great to talk with you more after about what we can do, but we are everything you said is completely true. And I mean, I think we're at this point now where, you know, even I could speak a lot to our university because I'm familiar, but I know our colleagues elsewhere have also done this. We're looking at our degrees thinking, how do we prepare our students to consider what an aging world looks like? And I just had a meeting with some colleagues um, in Australia, where we were talking about the fact that we need to design architecture programs that people are considering older adults and universal design principles from the get-go. That it's not that we have these specialized tracks. Like, how can we infuse gerontology throughout the curriculum? But yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Guest. And yeah, really in support of that idea of mainstreaming once again. So Tom Model, I see you have your hand raised, but first I'm going to go to Dr. Jane Comody's question. Her Wi-Fi is insufficient to unmute, but she wants to know a little bit more about how rural areas are engaged with universities or those who live in rural communities.
I
Yeah,
think I can
excellent.
unmute.
There we go.
I'm so sorry. You know, I'm doing this call from home, as some of you know, and so terrible Wi-Fi here in Brooklyn. But you know, I've known Dr. Gast in various ways, and certainly as a researcher. And it's just such a great presentation this morning, and I love the talk about mainstreaming. And but we know him. Because he had done a wonderful report on rural. You mentioned rural in your background. How, and maybe I missed it off and on here, but how are you connecting a university? Now, of course, Thiago, you've broadened my thinking about universities here. I think we put them in a box here in the United States, but this is really helpful because it's really broadening. But Dr. Guest, how is universities in rural? How does that help rural places? Your approach?
Yeah, no, I think, you know, we've actually just done an article with the University of Mississippi here. It's a conversation piece that we can share here where we talk about this very issue. And one of the ways that, you know, we kind of have engaged this, and I know that others such as Southern Oregon University, as well as some of our colleagues in Europe, which are in more kind of, you know, or less suburban environments, is that the principles really provide an opportunity to kind of distill and to have universities think about what they're doing in these environments. So some of our partners have developed trainings and programs that they're delivering through local county health departments. For example, our local centers on health, recognizing that they can't go into all of these they can't go into themselves, but they can make materials available. Others are developing, you know, one of the institutions that just joined, North American based, again, they joined because they recognized the need, and they were like, we're in an aging environment here in the rural. People are moving out, but we want to adapt. We need to identify, what do we need to do to move forward? What are the careers that people need? And then also, what are the engagement opportunities we can provide to reduce isolation and loneliness here? With the Age Friendly University Global Network and our principles, there's no one size fits all model. And so a lot of our colleagues are, a lot of the institutions that have developed kind of emphases on rural communities are doing so because they recognize the fact that they perhaps are seeing more rapid kind of population aging than their urban counterparts. And so they're doing so as a way to not only help drive the institution in the direction of increasing age inclusivity and universal design, which we really believe that increasing age inclusivity means increasing it for all individuals across the age spectrum. But they're doing it kind of with that exact point in mind, like, how can we think about what age-friendly rural looks like to us, and how can we kind of take the practices and the evidence that we have and distill it, and how can we hear back from those communities and say, yeah, that's great, but I don't have Wi-Fi, so I can't access what you're doing. So how can you redesign it so that we can have access to it? Or that's wonderful, but we don't have public transportation, so we can't get to your talk. We can't get to your cultural event. So how can you bring it to them? Our colleagues, I'll pick on Mississippi only because we were recently working with them, is they're really looking at how can we create modules, how can we create information systems where we're able to distribute this information without needing Wi-Fi, without needing access to technology. That's a conversation institutions in Mexico we've been talking with are also facing, because while many of the institutions are urban based, a lot of the population are actually very much in rural environments. So how can we have these bidirectional conversations, and recognizing that people are living longer and that people want to live in rural environments? It's not that they're, it's not they're being forced to, people are choosing to, but how can we ensure that these rural environments are appropriate and supportive for them as they age, and that we're meeting the interests that they have, and that if our students do want to enter a career in aging, that those careers are available to them in their either the education and careers are available to them either in their local community, or that they're able to access those and then return to the local community.
Thanks so much. And thank you, Jane, for that question. I like Dr. Guest, how you kind of demonstrated that this is a global problem. It is like community specific, but all around the world, we certainly see this. Tom Model, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, thank you very much. I just wondered if Dr. Guest would comment on what is going on within the age-friendly university community, which I've been familiar with starting around 2019. And I'm glad to see it's expanded so much. And let me try to make this brief. I'm thinking about the connections of the age-friendly universities in the context of their normal focus on providing academic type education on topical subjects, which would be similar to the kind of programs that, for example, are run by individual organizations in the U3A community worldwide and in the university communities here. I can't remember the name of the organization that sponsors it at the various universities programs, which are focused on, most of those courses are focused topically on history or politics or advanced technology or whatever it happens to be. And then there are the village communities themselves. I became acquainted with Age-Friendly University through Joanne Montpar when I was able to collaborate with her on providing a workshop on development of village communities, of which I've established one in the town of Reading. And one of my frustrations in the work that I do in age-friendly communities and also aging in place in particular is the fact that a great many people, for whatever reasons, don't engage in necessary thinking and planning necessary to their later years. And that is a subject that perhaps could be the focus of work by Age-Friendly University. And also, just a related topic, I know Arizona State has the Mirabella living community, and LaSalle University here in Boston has LaSalle Village. And LaSalle Village, because I'm on their waiting list, has been receiving a lot of inquiries from universities about establishing similar communities. So that would be a separate topic of how age-friendly universities are interested in establishing actual communities, which would be living laboratories. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, a lot to touch on there. I would say in regards to university-based retirement communities, yeah, we do have conversations. We have conversations with kind of the group that works on those. I as personally, I do research on those through our, part of our age-friendly efforts is actually Mirabella. That's one of the things we developed. There's about 125 or so university-based retirement communities, and we've done outreach to several of those. We know there's about 20 or so more being built. And so it's something that we're increasingly looking at, and we're increasingly kind of partnering with and providing feedback on. In fact, just recently, we, through my role through Mirabella at ASU, we've had some of those conversations to also direct them to other individuals, as well as kind of directed them to network members that have different models. I mean, you mentioned the villages model. That's one model that network members have. In regards to lifelong learning and the OSHA Lifelong Learning Network, we're also engaged in conversations with them. In fact, we will be hopefully doing an event with them in the very near future, as well as universities of the third age. And all of those represent really strong, commitments that are part of individuals' age-friendly university applications and their age-friendly university efforts that we document through our application. So back to the data point, one of the things we're doing now is collecting a lot of data around what universities are doing and how they're activating their kind of age-friendly principles. And increasingly, we're exploring partnerships beyond, with Ollie about how do we reach out and share information? How do we kind of share these broader programs? Universities of the third age is another group that we're having ongoing conversations with about how we can best complement one another, because these are very complementary activities that it's not that you have to do one or the other. You have a university-based retirement community, or you have a lifelong learning, or you have an age-friendly university. We really serve as kind of hopefully a convener that can bring the conversations together, as well as a mark that universities are thinking about this. And then those are excellent kind of program delivery things that people are doing. That yes, one of the I keep going back to these work groups people keep establishing them, but one of the things that we're looking at is just that, like, how do we have these conversations about university-based retirement communities or university-affiliated retirement communities? And very fascinating to that because, in addition to this role, I'm also the research director of our local Asha Lifelong Learning program, about how we're looking at how that's infusing activities. And I'm also the research lead for the Mirabella University-based retirement community research efforts here. So, it all I always joke all roads lead back to me, but in this regard, it is something that I'm trying to increasingly think about how we can infuse that and how we can introduce like the university-based retirement community more broadly. And one of the things that has been really exciting to us is, so Queensland University in Australia, they were not as familiar with the idea of the emeritus college, which is where faculty are able to, once you retire, our staff retire, that you can remain connected to the university. And through the network, they discovered it and they actually developed one. And that's increasingly the things that we want to see happening, where universities are taking these best practices that have developed and sharing them with one another and implementing them. And we're really seeing that kind of throughout the network, either through the establishment of degree programs, the sharing about what centers are doing, or even event types. We recently had in the United States, it's election season, and so a university recently hosted an event on aging in the election. And after that, several other universities kind of reached out to say, like, how could we do this? Because this is a conversation we want to replicate in our community.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Guest, and just highlighting in the chat that Tiago is encouraging universities to submit their age-friendly practices to the WHO Global Database of age-friendly practices. And it's a great resource for anybody interested in age-friendly environments as well.
Yes.
So we are quickly running out of time today. So Kira Farrell, I will leave you to ask the last question of today. Thanks for joining us, Kira.
Thank you. I'm delighted to say that on the West Coast in Ireland, we have 2 more universities who will be applying this year. So that's great. Oh, I'm just very interested in the research page, because as Tiago mentioned it earlier about the research, but what I am finding with the universities is there's a challenge in getting them to carry out research in a cross-disciplinary manner. Mm-hmm. So there might be a medical model or a social model, and they mightn't actually integrate those participatory pieces of work across the medical model or vice versa. Is that a challenge you see in other universities? And then the piece that I'm very pleased with is the universities are working hard with older people, but I'm not sure there's some work needed around how we disseminate research and findings, both to let them know it's happening and both to make it accessible for people who are not academics when the findings are there. Would you be able to talk to that a little, please?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, all these efforts started at Dublin City University with Christine O'Kelly, who's really led a lot of the efforts to get us here and continues to remain involved. No, I think that is a challenge. The work that one of the reasons the network was really established, the principles, really core to them is not only engaging older adults in the core activities of the university, but also the university kind of engaging in this process of ensuring that we're taking really interdisciplinary looks at aging. So it's not just the sociologist doing one thing and the and the medical providers doing another. I was very lucky in that my doctorate's actually in gerontology from a program that was interdisciplinary. And so universities have developed models of centers on aging and research that serve as coordinating hubs, not to prevent research from being done, but to ensure that if it is being done and as it's done, that we're working and building with one another in this interdisciplinary way. So all of a sudden you don't have you don't have a design school design a road, and then it turns out that older adults can't really drive on that road because of these design features that we've done, which is something that's actually happened to network member. And so that's an ongoing challenge, and it's one of the things I think we're working with our partners increasingly to identify how we can encourage these conversations. One of the ways that universities in our network have done it is because they do have to establish kind of a working group, is that working group becomes the emphasis or the focus of age-friendly efforts at the university, and it becomes a resource hub and conversation hub that we're doing that. And increasingly, we're trying to figure out not only how to do that internally within our universities, but more broadly within universities as a whole, so that we're able to work across, so that Arizona State is able to work with Dublin City University, is able to work with University of Manitoba, and that we're able to do these things in a way that we're supporting not only one another, but we're hearing back and we're sharing our knowledge from what we're learning. I'm a gerontologist, as many of you are, and it's always frustrating to me when I read something and it's like, oh, like the psychologist, if you're a psychologist, just discovered older adulthood, or like, the recently the physicists I was reading that, they're thinking about what does it mean to be aging, and it's like, well, it's great that the physicists have finally like figured out that we're aging. So that's an ongoing problem, I think, in the field, and it's something that we hope to assist with. Regarding dissemination, once again, completely agree. We will, we do have a research page on our website that we will hopefully be populating. Our website is now like 8 months old, so we're still kind of growing it out. But one of the things we really want to start sharing are things around, reframing aging. How do we talk about aging? How do we talk about older adults? What are the best principles to have kind of community advisory boards that you can share and disseminate information with? One of the things that has really come up again is that, we have a process for developing one-pagers that really kind of summarize the high points of the research that we're doing that we can then share more broadly with the community. And so that's something that we're encouraging networks members to do. And we hope that we will be having increasing more of that on our website. And then also linking to things like the age-friendly, world database that exists, as well as other databases that exist around things such as public health, medicine, social work activities, letting people know that, these resources and tools exist out there, and there's something that we can use. What I think professionally outside of this, like in my research role, what I often find is people reach out to me because they have a question and they don't know where to look. And the answer is probably out there. There has been something done. And so rather than reinventing the wheel every time someone new decides they want to focus on older adulthood or work with our aging population, how can we link those to the resources that are available? And even with our work, I think it's one of the things that has really stood out with me over the last 8 or so months is that a lot of the questions that universities come with or that they include on their application are things that they want to work with, are things that people have either figured out or can have conversations about. This is why this lifelong learning program didn't work. This is why this university village didn't work. This is why this research project worked very well. This is why this community collaboration worked very well. And it's sharing more about that, because I worry that universities are just producing, but they're not taking time to reflect.
Thank you so much, Dr. Guest. And I'd also like to open up the floor to Tiago to speak maybe a little bit further as someone who engages extensively with the global database of age-friendly practices.
Thanks, Kira. Just two very quick comments. I know we are close to completing the discussion. One, I think we have a great opportunity, Aaron, because we are in the process of updating the global database for age-friendly practices, and you are in the process of updating the website. We can concretely find ways to streamline this, and as you said, try and make sure that this information reaches as many people as possible. One quick point I wanted to make, and Kira's point was really good in that sense, is that we also need to try and influence the funders of research, because people like multi-intersectorial, multidisciplinary research more than they like to fund it. So I think, and we know that universities are very much influenced by the funding opportunities that they have. So I think that a concerted effort that we can try and work together in these global communities is also to try and shape the research agenda and the investments being made for advancing this area of work for us to create an age-friendly work together. So there's a lot of work to do on how to support universities in developing the research that we need to put that in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiago. So Dr. Guest, I will give space to you to respond if you would like to respond before starting to wrap things up.
Completely agree. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we are slowly coming to a close for the Global Cafe today. It's been wonderful to have you all on board and contributing. So before wrapping up, I'd love to hear, Dr. Guest, your key takeaways from today's discussion. But to allow you to gather your thoughts, I'll first introduce our next week's topic and speaker. We'll be joined by Dr. Laura Middleton and Mr. Bill Hyben. Those of you who attended the Canadian Association of Gerontologists conference in October in Toronto, I know I see a few people on the call who are there. They will be familiar with these guests as they gave a fantastic keynote presentation, and we are so lucky to have them join us. They will be speaking on the meaningful inclusion and participation of persons with dementia as a part of community wellness programs. Mr. Heben is a person with dementia, and we are very thankful to be able to have him share his experiences alongside Dr. Middleton. So back to you, Dr. Guest. What is your key takeaway message for all of us who had the pleasure to join today?
Yeah, no, well, thank you all for having me, and it's wonderful to be here. I often watch these after the fact because it's very, very early on the West Coast of the United States. But I would encourage, I think one of the key takeaways from here is really the fact that there are a lot of excellent activities being done at institutions of higher education and engaging with and how they engage with the community, but we're not necessarily doing them in a comprehensive and cohesive way. And so one of the goals of Age Friendly University is to kind of develop a comprehensive and cohesive means of universities engaging with communities, engaging with older individuals, and kind of engaging with the broader demographic shifts that we're having. I would encourage people to visit our website, afugn.org, which is I just saw in the chat, and to reach out to us if you have thoughts about ways we can work together, both either as a network or to visit our website and see what universities are in your local community. And if they're not in your local community, reaching out and encouraging them to consider joining the network. Our process, it's free to join. And so universities just have to really undergo kind of a 3-step process to join, including kind of the introspection and kind of looking out of like, what would the next 5 years look like? And I think, having individuals and community members reach out is one of the ways that many of our network members have came to us over the last year or so, because people have reached out and said like, oh, why aren't we an age-friendly university? What does this mean? So I would just say thank you all for, it's wonderful to see many of you for the first time, even though I've watched you online in the past, but I would encourage you to reach out to us. We're very happy to help. We're very happy to learn from you all as this initiative really takes off and moves into its next decade, one that we hope will be much more focused on, being outreach and engagement.
Thank you so much. And a good reminder of the shared ownership of these spaces and also responsibility to continue to promote age-friendly universities and spaces. So before we sign off, I would like to thank everyone again for another great week of our Global Cafe, and a special thank you to Dr. Aaron Guest. It was so fantastic to have you, and we hope you'll be listening into further episodes. Thank you as well to all the incredible people working at the IFA who've supported this and every Global Cafe, in particular, Miss Luana Colnego. I hope to see you all next Friday and wishing everyone a great weekend. Take care.